What's up everyone and welcome back to the channel. Let's dive into our first news. Sean O'Malley has once again stirred up the crossover fight conversation, this time making it clear he'd be open to stepping into the boxing ring if the payday is right. Speaking on Tim Welch's podcast, the former UFC bantamweight champion said he would be willing to box Ryan Garcia for $10 million. O'Malley admitted it would be a tough fight, but money talks, and if the check is big enough, he's more than happy to make it happen. O'Malley has flirted with the idea of crossover bouts before. Not long ago, he even called out Devin Haney for an MMA fight, showing that he's interested in testing himself against some of the biggest names in boxing. But this time around, he specifically mentioned Garcia, saying that if the UFC were to come to him with a proposal to fight Ryan Garcia as part of a big event, he'd absolutely consider it. He even entertained the idea of it being a co-main event under a potential super fight like Ilia versus Crawford, saying that if the numbers make sense, he's in. When pressed about the kind of money that would motivate him, O'Malley didn't hesitate to say $10 million. That's the number that would seal the deal for him. At the same time, he admitted that if someone offered $5 million, he'd still find it hard to turn down. It's less about the opponent and more about the size of the payday. He knows boxing matches can bring in massive purses, and if the opportunity came, he'd jump on it without hesitation. Despite showing openness to facing Garcia, O'Malley revealed that he would actually prefer a fight against Gervonta Davis. He explained that stylistically, Davis might even be a better matchup for him. While both Garcia and Davis are monsters in their own right, O'Malley seemed intrigued by the idea of stepping in against someone like Tank because of the way their styles might clash. He acknowledged that Davis is shorter, explosive, and incredibly powerful, but he believes that type of challenge might suit him better than Garcia's length and speed. The conversation highlighted how realistic O'Malley is about the risks involved. He didn't sugarcoat it. He knows both Garcia and Davis are dangerous fights. He called them monsters and admitted that boxing at that level is no joke. Still, he also understands the entertainment value and the financial upside. At this stage in his career, with his star power and the UFC platform behind him, O'Malley is in a position where crossover opportunities are always going to be part of the discussion. O'Malley's willingness to entertain these fights reflects the growing trend of MMA and boxing worlds colliding. With fighters like Conor paving the way years ago, it's clear that fans love these spectacles, and promoters know the money involved is massive. For O'Malley, it's all about timing, the right opponent, and most importantly, the right number on the contract. $10 million is the figure he threw out, but as he admitted, if the offer came in at $5 million, it would still be hard for him to say no. Either way, it shows that the idea of Sean O'Malley stepping into the boxing ring isn't as far-fetched as it once seemed. Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We are constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That is why we truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update here on MMA Pulse News. Moving on to another news, Kamaru Usman gave his honest take on how mateusz Gamrot can approach his upcoming clash with Charles Oliveira, and he believes the Polish contender must lean heavily on his wrestling if he wants to have any real chance at victory. Usman made it clear that Gamrot simply doesn't have the striking tools to stand toe-to-toe with Oliveira for long stretches, and at some point he will have to turn to what he does best. Usman explained that there's no question about it. If Gamrot is going to win this fight, wrestling has to be the key. That's his bread and butter, the thing that separates him from so many others in the lightweight division. But the challenge, as Usman pointed out, is that Oliveira thrives in those exact positions. The Brazilian's ability to flow in grappling exchanges is what has made him one of the most dangerous submission artists in UFC history. Whether it's throwing up 1, 2, 3, 4, or even 5 different submission attempts in a single scramble, Oliveira has proven time and time again that he can capitalize on the smallest mistakes. Because of this, Usman said Gamrot will have to adjust quickly if he wants to succeed. Oliveira is not someone you can take lightly on the mat, and if Gamrot insists on shooting for takedowns, he has to be ready for the chaos that comes with it. Usman acknowledged that many lightweight fighters in the past have chosen to strike with Oliveira simply out of fear of going to the ground. They didn't want to play with fire in his world, and that decision often gave Oliveira the advantage. His striking has grown dangerous enough that if you're too cautious, he'll pick you apart standing, and if you engage on the mat, you risk being wrapped up in a choke or an armbar within seconds. But Gamrot, in Usman's eyes, is not built like that. He's a pure wrestler at heart, and that's the direction he has to go. It doesn't mean he can't strike at all. Usman noted that in Gamrot's last fight, there were moments when he struggled to secure takedowns, and instead of panicking, he stayed on his feet and tried to let his striking go. He proved he can survive there when necessary. However, over the course of 5 rounds against someone as skilled as Oliveira, standing for too long could be a dangerous gamble. That's why Usman insists Gamrot needs to use his wrestling, but do so smartly, with adjustments ready at every turn. He can't just rely on the same entries or expect Oliveira to break easily. He must chain his attempts together, stay heavy on top, and avoid getting caught in transitions. Even then, it's far from guaranteed. Usman finished by saying he believes this matchup has all the makings of a banger. Oliveira will bring his dangerous submissions and improved striking, while Gamrot will bring relentless pressure and wrestling. Both fighters will be forced to step out of their comfort zones, and that's what makes this fight so intriguing for fans. Moving on to another news, Merab has doubled down on his promise to stand and trade strikes with Cory ahead of their massive showdown at UFC. In the lead-up to the fight, Merab had already declared that he would be willing to stand and bang, a move that immediately drew a warning from Cory. Sandhagen fired back quickly, saying it would be a huge mistake for Merab to abandon his wrestling, the weapon that has brought him so much success inside the octagon. But in his latest sit-down with New York Post Sports, Merab didn't back away from his claim. Instead, he doubled down, making it clear that his striking has leveled up and he's fully confident to trade punches with one of the most skilled strikers in the division. Everyone knows Merab's clearest path to victory lies in his relentless wrestling, drowning opponents with constant pressure until they eventually break. His cardio, chain wrestling, and pace have overwhelmed some of the toughest bantamweights in the sport. But if he really chooses to stick with his word and strike with Cory, fans could be in for a completely different kind of fight than what most people are expecting. This decision carries risk, as the MMA world has already seen how dangerous it can be when a wrestler abandons his strengths. It wasn't too long ago that Belal Muhammad decided to move away from his wrestling against a slick striker and paid the ultimate price, losing his belt because of it. That's the type of trap Merab has to avoid, especially with history on the line. Heading into this fight, Merab is closing in on an all-time record that highlights his identity as a relentless grappler. He's just 3 takedowns away from becoming the very first UFC fighter ever to land 100 takedowns inside the octagon. He's already shattered the long-standing record set by GSP, who sat at 90. Merab is currently sitting at 97, and with his style, most expect him to surpass the milestone with ease. Yet despite this, he insists his striking is sharp enough to cause real problems for Cory. Speaking with intensity and confidence, Merab explained that people keep telling him not to do this and not to take the risk, but he doesn't listen. He made it clear he will do whatever he wants, and he's motivated to prove himself once again. He said he's ready to strike with Cory Sandhagen, and while it's still MMA and the fight can go anywhere, he wants to exchange big punches. According to him, he can crack Cory, and that's the goal going into this battle. Merab reminded fans that he used to strike more earlier in his career, but at some point he shifted his focus completely toward wrestling. Now he feels like his striking is back where it needs to be, and he's ready to showcase it on the biggest stage. At the same time, he didn't rule out the possibility of Cory trying to take him down, saying fans shouldn't be surprised if Sandhagen shoots on him. Still, Merab insists his hands are ready, his striking is sharp, and he's fired up for the fight. Moving on to another news, Daniel Cormier has weighed in on the latest chaos surrounding Conor and his wild demands. Speaking on the newest episode of the Good Guy Bad Guy podcast, Cormier made it clear that he doesn't think it's fair to compare any fighter in the game today to Conor. Over the years, people have tried to stack others up against him, but Cormier believes there's truly no one who matches that same level of star power. In his words, Conor is one of a kind. However, Cormier did admit that if there was someone who came close, it might just be Ilia. Cormier explained that Ilia in many ways has lived up to the hype in a similar fashion. From the moment he stepped into the UFC, expectations were sky high, and unlike most, Ilia delivered. According to Cormier, that alone is something special. He doesn't necessarily believe Ilia will ever reach the level of stardom Conor has, but he credits him for carrying the weight of all that pressure and still delivering at every stage. He said Ilia should be proud because not many fighters live up to the hype that gets built around them, but Ilia has proven to be one of those rare few who actually did. Then Cormier turned his attention to the latest headlines surrounding Conor's shocking list of demands for the rumored UFC White House card. Reports surfaced that Conor wants an outrageous package to show up and fight. He's not just asking for a massive payday, but also golden visas. According to Cormier, Conor is essentially asking for $100 million plus 100 US golden visas for his family and friends. To put that into perspective, those visas are worth about $1 million each, meaning Conor is effectively asking for around $200 million in total. Cormier couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. He explained that while everyone else is fighting for a spot on what could be one of the biggest UFC cards in history, Conor is sitting back and saying, "No, you need me on this card and you're gonna pay to get me there." Cormier pointed out that thousands of fighters would happily take the opportunity for free. But Conor being Conor, he's flipping the narrative completely. He's not chasing the spotlight. He knows the spotlight needs him, and he's making it clear that if the UFC and the White House want him involved, they're gonna have to pay up big time. Cormier admitted it's classic Conor to stir the pot like this, demanding things no one else would even think of asking for. 100 golden visas plus a 9-figure check isn't a normal negotiation. It's Conor being outrageous, yet still somehow believable because of the name and the star power he brings. For Cormier, it was just another reminder that comparing anyone to Conor is pointless. Love him or hate him, there is nobody else in the fight game that can demand something so extreme and still have the entire world talking about it. Moving on to another news, Khamzat recently revealed that he had an intense sparring session with Ilia as he continues to wait for the official announcement of his first UFC title defense. Khamzat has been spending much of his time in the UAE, where he has kept busy training and staying sharp while also enjoying time with his close circle of friends. Alongside him during this period has been his good friend Russian vlogger Adam Zubairov, who regularly films interviews and day-in-the-lifestyle content featuring Khamzat. The two have been seen together often, with Adam capturing not just fight talk but also the behind-the-scenes lifestyle that fans don't usually get to see. Recently, Khamzat and Adam sat down for another casual interview, and naturally Naturally, the conversation turned toward his dominant performance over Robert Whittaker at UFC 3. That card was headlined by the huge featherweight clash between Max Holloway and Ilia, a fight that Ilia won in spectacular fashion, securing a finish over the former long-reigning champion. While discussing that night and the Georgian's victory, Khamzat casually dropped an interesting detail, revealing that he had actually sparred with Ilia shortly before the fight took place. Despite the clear size and weight difference between the two, Khamzat explained that he did not hold back during the session. He admitted that sometimes he forgets he has a fight coming up, and when the sparring starts to heat up, he just goes all out as if it were another tough day in the gym. Khamzat described how Ilia pushed the pace, trying to go hard himself, which in turn brought out Khamzat's intensity. He admitted to cracking Ilia with some hard shots before eventually taking him down, though he laughed off the idea of going into detail about what happened after that, saying it wasn't necessary to share more. The connection between Khamzat and Ilia didn't come out of nowhere. Khamzat is a close friend of Georgian fighter Guram Kutataladze, and Ilia has trained with Guram multiple times in the past. Through that bond, the two eventually ended up spending time together at the famed All-Stars gym, where footage has shown both Khamzat and Ilia sharing rounds and working side by side. It highlights the respect and camaraderie that runs deep between fighters, even when they're in different weight classes and on different championship paths. During the interview, Khamzat also praised Ilia's performance against Holloway, calling it a huge achievement for Georgian MMA. He emphasized that having a UFC champion representing Georgia in multiple divisions is something truly special, and he expressed admiration for Ilia's rise. He spoke as someone who knows firsthand the intensity Ilia brings to training and competition, and it was clear there's a mutual recognition of toughness between them. Khamzat explained that their sparring sessions are always competitive because neither man likes to take it easy. Even with the size difference, Ilia comes forward aggressively, which forces Khamzat to push harder. That mentality is exactly what makes sparring with elite fighters so valuable, giving both men the chance to test themselves at the highest level even outside of fight night. Moving on to another news, things took a heated turn on Thursday when Alex Pereira and Magomed finally crossed paths at the UFC Performance Institute. A clip quickly surfaced online, posted by Ankalaev himself, showing the two engaging in a tense back-and-forth exchange through Google Translate. The moment captured Ankalaev visibly frustrated, pointing aggressively toward the floor as if daring Pereira into escalating the situation into a physical showdown. The intensity was clear, and it immediately fueled speculation about whether their rivalry had crossed from professional competition into something more personal. Not long after, Pereira responded in his own way, posting a short clip that seemed directed straight at Ankalaev. In the video, Pereira appeared to be reading one of Ankalaev's own tweets right to his face, almost mocking him with his own words. This tit-for-tat exchange only added more fuel to the fire, leaving fans buzzing about the growing animosity between the two fighters. What began as a professional rivalry was quickly turning into a very personal battle, with both men refusing to back down. Later in the day, Ankalaev decided to address the media directly, giving his side of the story and clarifying exactly what had gone down. He explained that just a few days earlier he had been doing physical therapy, receiving a massage, when he was told that Pereira was also at the facility. However, he never actually saw Pereira that day. To his surprise, the following day a video surfaced where Pereira suggested that Ankalaev was hiding from him, an accusation that struck a nerve. Ankalaev admitted he was angered by the video because, according to him, it was completely false. So when he saw Pereira at the Performance Institute, he immediately approached him, confronting him directly. He asked Pereira when exactly he had seen him, because in Ankalaev's view, that moment never happened. Pereira's response was that a girl had told him Ankalaev was there, but then Pereira quickly switched the topic, avoiding the core of the accusation. For Ankalaev, that was the breaking point. He explained that up until recently, he had held a level of respect for Pereira, both as a fighter and as a person, but in his eyes, that respect was now gone. Trash talk, he admitted, is part of the fight game. It can be used to hype up about, entertain fans, or even just throw some salt into the rivalry. But lying, he insisted, is a completely different matter. For Ankalaev, Pereira's claims that he was hiding were not only false but also crossed the line into disrespect. He finished by saying that he cannot respect someone who spreads lies to build a narrative. To him, this wasn't just about fight promotion anymore. It was about character and integrity. Pereira's actions left Ankalaev convinced that their rivalry had reached a point of no return, where mutual respect no longer existed and only animosity remained. With tensions this high, the inevitable clash inside the octagon now feels even more charged, as both men look determined to settle their differences the hard way. Moving on to another news, Daniel Cormier recently shared his thoughts on why the UFC allowed Jon Jones to fight Stipe miocic, and what might have gone on behind the scenes with that decision. According to Cormier, the UFC likely gave Jon the Stipe fight with the expectation that he would later agree to fight Tom Aspinall. In his view, that was the trade-off. Jon would get the legacy-defining matchup he wanted against Stipe, but in return, the UFC hoped he'd be willing to take on the dangerous interim champion afterwards. Cormier questioned Jon's timing, pointing out that he retired and then jumped back into the testing pool sooner than expected. He admitted he finds it hard to believe Jon would outright duck anyone, because of his skill level, acknowledging that Jon is undeniably good. At the same time, Cormier pointed out that Jon has shown little interest in facing Aspinall, and that's something that stands out. He explained that at a certain point in a fighter's career, especially someone like Jon Jones who has accomplished so much, it becomes natural to want to pick and choose fights that add the most to your legacy. Cormier stopped short of saying fighters earn that right, but he acknowledged that indirectly when you've beaten so many legends and built such a resume, you do get to a place where you want to dictate the fights that matter to you most. When Jon fought Stipe, there was already an interim champion in place. That created a unique situation. Cormier suggested the UFC essentially told Jon, "We'll give you the fight with Stipe, but in exchange you'll have to face Aspinall next." From the UFC's perspective, that would have kept both the fans and the division satisfied. Jon would get his legacy back, and then the promotion could unify the division by forcing the fight with Aspinall. But when the time came, Cormier believes Jon simply had no interest in following through. He thinks Jon decided that he didn't want to fight Aspinall, regardless of what the UFC might have hoped or expected. Cormier phrased it bluntly, saying Jon's attitude seemed to be, "I just don't really want to do that." At that point, it became less about the UFC's plans and more about Jon doing what he felt was best for himself. Cormier wrapped up by making it clear that Jon has always operated differently than most fighters. He has his own way of thinking about legacy, money and risk, and when he feels like he's done enough, he's not afraid to walk away. That's it from MMA Pulse News. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for daily MMA news.